Over the last 20 years, Africa has experienced an exponential growth across all economic sectors, from ICT to the arts. Africa is a promise to the world. It's this promise that we want to build on.
My name is John Seke. I'm a partner at Coulson Honey, a firm of advocates in Nairobi. I head the intellectual property department of the firm, and my daily activities involve advising clients on various aspects of intellectual property protection and enforcement, and at the back of it, commercialization. Intellectual property is divided into a number of different classes. You have trademarks, which deals with brands. You have copyright, which deals with creations of the mind. You have patents, which deal with science and technology innovation. And you've got industrial design rights, which deal with three-dimensional forms and protection of the same. Area in which I feel that there's a lot coming out of in terms of Kenya is in the area with respect to copyright, where you have a lot of developers coming up with a lot of intellectual property assets that need protection in this country. And the key issues that they need to be aware of whenever they develop or create assets which would be protected under this regime of copyright is that the work needs to be original and a creation of their own and eligible for copyright protection in the sense that there's been sufficient effort and effort involved in the creation of that particular work.
My name is Maura Kirore. I'm the creative director and founder of Planet Rakas, a game development company. Some of the games that we're best known for are Ma3 Racer and Ma3 Racer 1.5. I've been a developer or game designer since 2010. Started this as a hobby and really became passionate about it. Our first title, Ma3 Racer, did really well on the Nokia platform. It's gone on to be downloaded over 1 million times worldwide. Because the whole idea behind our company is to create content that's told from an African perspective. So we decided the easiest entry point was to pick a popular genre like racing games and then put our own spin on it. One of the things we learned about during this whole experience is the importance of protecting your IP. One of the things we did early on while we were creating the game itself, we trademarked all and copyrighted all of our ideas. And this actually helped us a lot in dealing with a situation that arose 3 or 4 months into once we launched the game. Once we had put the game up on the Nokia store, a company which had a music band by the name of Ma3, which is very similar to the title of our racing game, actually sent a cease and desist letter to Nokia based on the fact that they thought that we had infringed on their copyright or on their trademark. Luckily for us, we had a good IP lawyer, and in her explanation of the whole situation to Nokia, she was able to prove that our particular IP had been trademarked in a different class from theirs, and there was no similarity. Why this is important is because as much as creating the games and creating great content is very important, it's also it was a good lesson for us in terms of protecting your intellectual property.
So my name is Tony Dongo. I am the founder of Kitabu. The company currently has a new CEO. I was CEO until about a week ago, which is nice. And what Kitabu does generally is we're in textbook digitization and distribution. We are about accessing information for people who don't necessarily have the money to buy textbooks in bulk, which is most users of textbooks. I've been doing this, so this company has existed for 2 years, 2.5 years or so. My father and I are the ones who started the company. The idea behind it was how to find affordable solutions to accessing textbook and learning content for children, specifically in low-income areas, that uses technology but is not heavily reliant on a particular type of technology. The idea behind it was very simple. How do we take technology that already exists and turn it into technology that can be applied in education? And the answer was dongles, very simple dongles. And finding a way to store information that can then be put into the dongles, and finding a way to use the mobile cellular providers in Kenya, who are very, very good providers, to see how we can be able to find a payment system that works, at the same time allowing users to be able to acquire content in bite-sized chunks. And that's what Kitabu has done. We generally allow users to rent content per hour, per day, per week, per month, or per school term, and we allow them to rent a chapter, a page, or an entire book for whatever amount of time they can afford. And that, in a nutshell, is Kitabu. I'm not a developer. People think that I am, but I'm not a developer. I'm an innovation architect, which basically means I create the innovation, I work around the infrastructure and the framework of the innovation, and then I find software developers to build a company for me or to build an application for me. This matters specifically because when you're getting software developers to create an idea you've come up with, if you do not have intellectual property control over the idea, you're in trouble, because they can easily take what you have framed up in your mind, construct the actual application, and then sell it or replicate it anywhere else in the world. And education is one of those markets that not many people have walked into and been successful at. So Kitabu was the first thing we actually did, and it's funny because we spent almost 70% of the initial investment we got to secure IP for the company, and the way in which we disseminate, we pay for, store, and access information. So that was a very big deal for us. And the reason why that is important is because as we look at a lot of companies that are coming out of Kenya, one of the things most companies spend money on is the application itself, and not so much on the intellectual property, not realizing that when you sell your company, what you're really selling is the IP, not just the app. You're selling more than just the functionality of the app, which can be replicated very quickly. It's the intellectual property that you're selling or that you own. So what we did was we found a very capable lawyer, gave him quite a bit of money, and told him, go to Kipi and get our application registered, not just for Kenya, but for Kenya, for China, and for the US. So that cost quite a bit of money for us, and we're still paying for it as we go. But fortunately, we've been able to register with Kipi, we've been able to register with WIPO as well, and we've been able to start the process of registering in other parts of the world as well, because we don't want Kitabu to be a local application, we want it to go Africa-wide, and then hopefully want it to become a developing nation application. Some of the ways we found out about intellectual property was we sought it out. We knew that IP was a big deal. If I remember in the 2011, 2012 when Kitabu was starting, there were very big cases between Samsung and Apple in the news that a lot of people are talking about in terms of IP. The fight was so big that one company was being stopped from selling products in one company's country. So we went seeking information on IP and how to protect ourselves from companies in Kenya, but also companies abroad. So those are the things that we did. We sought it out, we found advice, we found the best people in the market. We sat down and had a conversation, and we decided this is something we want to pursue, and we did. How do we commercialize? So for now, the company is fully owned as a private company. We've got shareholders, we are 5 in total. And amongst the 5 of us, we've been putting money into the company, generating the application, getting pilot projects done, courtesy of grants from different companies, including Microsoft, and being able to test the application before we roll it out towards the end of this year. One of our biggest hopes is that we can be able to leverage the government's platform of laptops and see if we can create a very affordable solution, not just for the end user, but also for the government as it gets into finding out how they can disseminate content very quickly and very affordably. And we think the dongle solution will really work because there are already 3.8 million dongles in the country. The benefits of registering for IP are immense. I could speak for hours about how loyalties matter, how growing your company matters, how merging your company makes sense if you only have IP. I could also talk about the companies that have offered to buy a stake in Kitabu, and specifically, not even in the application itself, in the IP. In that, because we register the company as an IP, because we've registered the IP particularly in Kenya and around the world, it makes it easy for companies to come and find an opportunity in Kitabu for Kenya, for Africa, and for the developing world, especially companies that do not have applications ready for this part of the market. So as we grow, companies will be buying into our IP, and we can be able to franchise the application, which means we don't have to necessarily be in a country to use it. We can lend it to somebody else to use it on our behalf, and we make royalties of that use. Many examples of that are happening around the world. Even a lot of full-scale applications allow people to register and use them as part-time vendors. And that's a big deal for Kitabu because we don't want to be managing 15 or 16 countries at once. We'd rather have franchise models where people who are registered users of Kitabu in different countries use this application, then they give us royalties for use of the application in their own countries, especially because education is specific to every nation. There's no blanket form of education, and an application cannot replicate that. My advice for upcoming developers is pretty straightforward. The first thing you need to protect is your idea. It's not a company. The company can be brought down and recreated anywhere in the world in days. But the IP, that's an issue. It's taken us a year to be able to get it, and even this month we are reapplying again for our IP just to confirm that everything is there globally. But once you put the money in the right place, it becomes very easy for you to monetize of what you have designed, of what you have created, of what you have built, of what you have rolled out, when you actually own the intellectual property behind your application. Otherwise, you're going to do all this work, then somebody else comes and registers it and runs off with it, and you have nothing in terms of legal recourse, because you never went and took the right procedures to prove that the application or the intellectual property is yours. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're creating something, my number one advice is the first person you should visit after your co-founder or your investor is your lawyer. It's extremely important, and there's no way you can substitute protecting and covering your IP with big profits. That's never going to work. Start with your investors, your co-founders, and make sure you run to your lawyer after that. That's my advice, and that's generally the advice anybody in Kitabu would give you if you were to ask them.
And I am inspired by entrepreneurs like Tony Dugu of Kenya, who's also come to Kuala Lumpur this week. The first company that Tony built failed, but he didn't give up. He did what any of you would do. He just tried again. And Tony's latest innovation lets students rent textbooks electronically, a book at a time, a chapter at a time, or even a page at a time. And by making textbooks more affordable, he gives lower income students a chance to learn that they might not otherwise ever have had. But that's not his only motivation, my friends. Tony is dyslexic. And when he was a student, he had to listen to cassette tapes of audio books. So Tony's dream is to lower all kinds of barriers to education in the developing world.
Yes, my name is John Waivoshi. I'm the CEO of Virtual City Limited. So we do a lot of work with distribution companies, with agricultural commodity companies, in helping them manage their field operations using software applications. A lot of our work is based around mobile. Some of it is based around the integration into the cloud systems. And we've been doing this for the last 14 years now. So Virtual City is now 14 years old and still very much based around developing innovations for the manufacturing and agricultural companies around East Africa. Some of the innovations that we have out in the market, we have a product called Distributor, which helps manage the distribution of products from manufacturers down to distributors, down to retailers. And through that, managing what products are being sold, what orders are being taken, collecting payments via mobile money, and integrating the entire supply chain. We do the same thing in agriculture, in managing what produce has been bought from the smallholder farmers, the collection centers, the buying centers, all the way through the factory and into processing. And once again, we use our software tools to be able to do that. In terms of intellectual property, what I'd say is that we've gone through many different hoops in trying to see how can we make sure that we protect our software best of all. And it's been a long process. It's been difficult in terms of that we've had to learn across the way. We've not had a place where we can go to and learn exactly what to do. So we've actually had to take a couple of chances, make a couple of mistakes on our own to figure out how to actually do that. Eventually, we managed to get the right IP lawyers who helped us be able to structure how we get our products protected, how we get our trademarks protected. And then that's something that we probably accomplished about 3 or 4 years ago. And now we've been able to do that. So I think what the IP Hub is doing is quite timely because all of us in the local market have struggled with getting the right advice, knowing where we need to go to get our software protected, how best to protect it. And because of this, you've actually had a lot of, I'd say a lot of software companies even thinking about relocating the ownership of the intellectual property outside of Kenya and outside of Africa, simply because of lack of understanding about how best to do this. Of course, we'd like to keep all of the innovations protected within Kenya. And through the IP Hub, we're hoping that we'll get the best advice about how to go about this and how to do it correctly. My suggestion to the developers is continue doing what it is that you're doing, putting Kenya on the map, but at the same time making sure that we're getting the correct legal advice and we are protecting our software and making sure that not only are we building it here, but we're able to export it profitably and making sure that we're able to grow the software ecosystem in this country. Thank you.
The iHub, therefore, is my involvement to the iHub is that we are partners of the entity that has come up with this particular with it, and the iHub is something that has been created to ensure that any developer who decides or who takes part in iHub is able to benefit from a lot of the from the expertise that is availed to him, and therefore allow them, for instance, in the intellectual property field, and protect and enforce the intellectual property rights. And this will then allow them to benefit in the sense that at the back of the entire regime, because as I said, intellectual property not only relates to protection of the assets that you have, but also commercializing them, benefit from the back-end commercialization of their intellectual property assets.